Good effort. We got our project back. So now, of course, I would want to set up my store. So why would I want to set up the store? Because if we take a look at the finished project, we can see that we also have a products page where I display all the products. So in a home page, we just display featured products. Or in the products page, we display all the products. And technically, you could make an argument that we could fetch the same product in the products page as well. But I wanted to showcase that, for example, if you have multiple pages, maybe a better option is to set up some kind of functionality where you only fetch those products in the homepage. And then once you set them up, you can just pass them into a local storage. So that's why in the products, we don't perform anymore a fetch request. We just grab those items from the local storage. So that would be the first functionality that the store is going to take care of. And the second one, of course, as we're looking at the API, we'd want to massage the data a little bit, correct? Because if you're looking at it, notice you have the ID, then you have fields, then you have image. And while this is a normal setup for the API, it probably would be better if once we get this data, in order to use it all throughout our application, we'd also massage it a little bit, where all the properties would be side by side with the values, because it's going to be much more easier instead of doing this whole dance each and every time. So those are the two functionalities that I would want to take care of in my store. I would want to make it available all throughout our project because, let me reiterate, we have multiple pages. That's why we need to do that. And I don't want to perform a fetch request in the product. And the second one, because I would want to massage data, but only in one place. So with this in mind, I'll make sure that there are no unnecessary console logs in fetch product because we're pretty much done with this module. And then in here, notice I have setup store and store, and that is coming from store.js product. And in here, I have the products, but I'm just going to check if the products are good, meaning if my response is correct, then I would want to do these things that we're about to set it up. If not, then I'm not going to do anything. Then essentially there's just going to be that loading sitting over there. Okay. So I'm only doing this if my products are there, because remember, we also had an option for undefined. That's why I'll check if the products are truthfully, essentially if they're true. And if that is the case, then I'm just going to add a comment of add products to the store. And of course, we'll run our setup store function. So say products in here. Now, if we navigate to a store, by the way, store is in the source, and then I'm looking for store.js. In this file, what you'll notice is that we have get storage item and set storage item, something that we'll do in the next video. Then we have empty array, which is my store, then the setup store function, the one that we just invoked and passed the products. And of course, we also have find product. And all of them are just placeholders. So now, of course, I would want to set up store functionality. Now, I already know that in a store, in a setup store more specifically, I'm getting my products, correct? I had that array. So let's take a look. We're going to have products. That is going to be my parameter since I'm passing it as an argument. And now where I have the store, my array, I would want to set it equal to the products, and I would want to iterate over, correct? So I'm going to call map, and then I would want to access each and every product. Now, if you want to double check whether everything is happening correct, you can go with product, then return it. You'll see that nothing changes here, but of course, I would want to console log it just so I can see that, yes, I'm accessing the correct product. And this is something that I would always suggest, where as you start passing data from one module to another one, just make sure that everything works before you set up a bunch of functionality. So if I take a look at the console, I can see that I'm accessing each and every product, which is good. which means that now I just need to work on massaging that data. And what I would want to do first, well, remember when I'm checking out my product, like I keep on saying, I have ID and fields, and I would want to combine them into one object. So first, what I would want is to destructure the data out of that product. So first, I'm looking for the ID and I'm looking for the fields. And by the way, this gave me something that I didn't want. So I'm going to go with ID. And for some reason, again, it just keeps on adding. Maybe it's because I skipped the const again. So I'm going to go with ID and then I'm looking for the fields. So ID has the property of ID and fields have all our fields, whether that is color, companies, and everything of that nature. So I'm going to destructure that out of the product. And of course, what I need to understand is that I would want to return something also from my callback function, correct? And what I'm returning is a new object. And I'll just make sure that I add properties that I would want. So first, I'm going to go with ID. And then from the fields, I would want to keep on destructuring. So what I'm looking for in the fields, well, I have company name, I have colors, I have whether it is featured. And this is important because this is the value we'll use in a homepage because we only would want to display featured products. And then we have this interesting price. Now, price, I'll leave it for a little bit later because I'm going to go over why this value is so interesting, because as you're looking at it, you're like, well, there's something off. There should be decimals, there should be dollar signs and all that. But it's just 999, okay? And then we have the name, of course, and then we have the image, which is going to be somewhat of the pain because it is an array, and then within the array is an object, and then I'm looking for thumbnails, and then the large one. So let's destructure these things. So I have my colon. I'm looking for whether the product is featured. I'm looking for the name. I'm looking for the price. I'm looking for the company, and I'm also looking for the colors. I'm looking for the colors, and then eventually, of course, I would want to have my image, correct? So I'm going to go with comma and then image. That is my property. However, I would want to right away give it an alias, and we already know that we just need to add a comma and then say img. Why? Because I will have to access more things from this img right now. And then I would want to use the same name in the product that I'm returning. Okay. So this is just a simple step how I can access the img. And then once I access the img, there's going to be a new variable by the name of image. So before I deal with an image, now what I would want to do is just pass these properties into a object that I'm returning. So I'm going to go with featured. I'm going to go with name, price, and then company, and then also colors. So pretty much I'm grabbing the same values. The only one that's going to be a little bit different is the image. And now, since I gave it an alias of img, I can create a new property by the name of, you guessed it, image. So I'm going to go with image. And now I'm looking for img. Then, like I said, is an array. And the first item, then the property that I'm looking for is thumbnails, then large, and then the URL. So this is where my URL is setting for that image. So if you click, this is the image that you're looking for. That's why we need to do that whole dance. Okay, good. And in here, of course, once I've passed in the colors, I would also want to set up my image like so. And if you want to console log, you can console log. Of course, you can go with log and then store. You'll see that in your console. And by the way, here it says large is undefined. Okay. Let me double check that on 9. And of course, I have the error. It should be thumbnails. And I missed out on the M. And once we have all our functionality in place, once we have massaged our data and set up the store, of course, we have console log for the store, but you'll see that essentially it's going to be interesting where we won't be able to see the store, meaning store is still going to be an empty array. Now, why is that happening? Well, let's think about it. So in the index.js, we import setup store and store coming from store.js. So what that means is that it invokes it, correct? Right away, store.js. So what happens is we don't call setup store before we console logging the store. What happens is we are console logging the store, and only then in the index, once we have fetched the product, then we call setup store. So what I'm trying to say is that yes, it's going to be an empty array in the store.js. However, if we go back to a index one and console log the store, the one that we're exporting from this file, by the way, I'll spend a separate video on these exports of what is happening over here. Then you'll notice that this is correct. So once we have called setup store, notice how we have nicely massaged our data. And then in here, as you're looking at it, you can notice that, of course, I have all these properties sitting side by side. So now I have the array with objects, and each and every object has these properties. And of course, I have the values. So not only we fetch the data, now we massage the data. And now, of course, we'll have to decide how we can pass this info from one page to another one.